You're live.
Thank you. And we're back with the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee, and here with James Duffy, fiscal analyst, who's way down on the other side of the table from us, from the Joint Fiscal Office. We're going to learn about the Technology Modernization Special Fund. So please take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. For the record, James Duffy, fiscal analyst with the Joint Fiscal Office. I regrettably was not able to join the committee for your first meeting of the session last month, but I understand there were some questions about the Technology Modernization Special Fund that came up during that last meeting and last discussion. So I'm here today with about a 10-minute presentation for the committee, just kind of introducing folks to the basics, the 101 of the special fund for those who might not be familiar, and left some time at the end to go into any specific questions that committee members may have. So just to start us off, Joint Fiscal Office is a nonpartisan legislative office. We're dedicated to producing unbiased fiscal analysis, and this presentation is meant to provide information for legislative consideration and not to provide policy recommendations. So we'll start off by giving a brief kind of introduction to IT budgeting and the context of the state budget. I think when we're talking about how we fund IT modernization in the state of Vermont, it's useful to ground ourselves a bit in the background of how IT in general is funded across state government. So we'll talk about that very quickly before moving into our overview of the Tech Modernization Special Fund, its history, its primary uses, current projects, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and discussion. So when talking about state funding in Vermont and in state governments in general, I find that it's useful to make a distinction between operating costs, right? So the day-to-day cost of running state building Wi-Fi networks or connectivity programs, and larger, maybe one-time or more discrete system modernization costs. In practice, these two categories may often blur together. For example, the Technology Modernization Special Fund is something that's often thought of as primarily funding large legacy IT system upgrades. But under its statutory construction, it could also foreseeably be used for running some of those same new systems. But in general, it's useful when talking about how IT is funded to distinguish operating costs, which are funded primarily through the annual routine budget cycle, from the system modernization costs, which tend to be funded in more discrete one-time appropriations, be they from the general fund, the Technology Modernization Special Fund, or some other kind of one-time bespoke source. And then on top of that, funding stacks for each project might look different. When we're looking at these large scale IT modernization projects, system upgrade projects, take UI modernization, something large on that scale. Oftentimes there are multiple funding sources. It might be from a special fund here in the state. There might be federal funding in the mix, federal match to help get the system up and running, in addition to direct agency appropriations done through the annual budget process. But today we'll be talking primarily about special funds and the IT Modernization Fund in particular. So the Technology Modernization Special Fund, this was created relatively recently. It's created in fiscal year 2022. Its primary purpose is to finance state investments in IT system upgrades and modernization. It's right there in the name. It's administered by the Agency of Digital Services, and the expenditures from the fund can only be made with specific appropriation and project authorization from the General Assembly. And so I think it's a really important thing to understand about the Tech Modernization Special Fund, that its purview can really be quite broad in terms of the kinds of upgrades and projects it funds, but each of those must be identified and authorized specifically by the General Assembly. This is just the statutory citation for those who are interested. And again, with the Tech Modernization Fund is primarily administered through the executive branch by ADS. Recommendations can be made to the General Assembly by the CIO as to what projects are prioritized for funding, but ultimately that authority, as with all appropriation authority, rests with the General Assembly. Modernization Fund has supported some of the largest recent IT modernization efforts in the state, which I'm sure many of the members of this committee are familiar with. The Department of Labor Unemployment Insurance Modernization Project received a $30 million appropriation from the Modernization Fund for that purpose. DMV modernization, the ERP financial system. These are some of the higher profile, more salient projects that have received recent funding from the special fund. I think another really important thing to note about the Tech Modernization Special Fund, and I believe this has come up in the committee today, is that there is no recurring annual appropriation for the Modernization Special Fund. So routine IT operating costs done through the annual budget cycle in collaboration between executive branch departments and agencies and the legislature. But the Tech Modernization Fund was really created back in fiscal year 2022 when the state had a large surplus of federal funds and funding at its disposal to make these kinds of investments. And there were large early appropriations made from the general fund to the Tech Modernization Special Fund, or transfers, I should say, to the Modernization Special Fund. Today, its current balance as of at the end of FY24 sits around $82.5 million. But those have all come in the form of these discrete, one-time, usually large appropriations. There is no statutory process for making annual appropriations, either to the Technology Modernization Special Fund or for large-scale IT projects in general, be that through the general fund or some other special fund.
No, please.
I'll leave it between the two of you.
So I'm going to quickly reveal that I'm not on the Appropriations or Ways and Means Committees. Is that fund in an interest-bearing situation?
It is, and proceeds from, per the authorizing statute, proceeds from the modernization fund from interest or return to the Tech Modernization Special Fund.
Do you have a sense of what that was in the last year?
I can pull up the special fund report if you'd like. I have it here. Yeah, you can see the account revenue here.
I'm not sure folks can see my hand.
I couldn't see your hand, so we'll go Senator Weeks and then Rep. James after.
Okay, so I'm just pulling up the special fund report. Okay. Stop sharing and share this screen. All right, so here you have the FY24 special fund report. I apologize, I don't have the FY25 one available to me just yet, but you'll see that the column number, this column here, the third column from the left shows account revenue sources. So we'll scroll down to the Tech Modernization Special Fund, and that displays revenue generated by the account.
Can we get a little bigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so unfortunately, I don't have the breakdown available to me. I'm sure that, that figure could have been, composed of different revenue streams, but included in that number would have been interest for on the balance in the account.
Oh, so that's not just the interest.
It may be. I'm just not sure if 100%, like what percentage of that number may be interest borne on the account or some other form of revenue. I don't quite know how finance and management, puts together that total figure, but that would be the maximum number. I can get the more specific for you if you would like.
Would it be appropriate to assume that the 82.5 million is an obligated sum for projects, just as you started on the other slide with certain projects, that the 82 million is obligated?
As in, it has a specific appropriation that's been assigned to it. My understanding is yes, although I can't say for certain that of the total, like there was an original large appropriation made to the Technology Modernization Special Fund. It was about $50 million that was transferred to the special fund from the general fund within the first year of its creation, about $50 million balance. My understanding is that all of those balances have since been obligated, but I would have to confirm that for you before saying so definitively.
I just want to make sure I understand that all of the money that is in the fund is obligated to specific projects.
I'm saying I'm not 100% confident of the answer to that question, that there may in fact be an unobligated balance. My understanding is that the money is spoken for, but I would have to confirm to.
See ADS shaking their head.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that full $82.5 million represents obligated funds for this.
And Rep. James.
Thanks. I couldn't see the head shaking confirmed, right, that
Yes.
money is obligated. So this gets to my earlier point that I was making, which it just keeps kind of rolling around in my mind about whether there should be a different way. Because from our earlier testimony, when James did this presentation to our committee, what I remembered anyway, was that the Technology Modernization Special Fund is like a bucket. And when big projects come up that need appropriations, we have to try to come up with that money and appropriate that money, and we dump it into that bucket where it sits. But we're not saving for a rainy day. We're not routinely putting in $5-10 million a year to try to build up a balance, basically. And maybe that's not the way state appropriations work, but it seems to me that we've put ourselves in more of a reactive financial position rather than a proactive financial position. If I'm understanding how this works, it was what I was trying to talk about a little bit earlier.
And Rep. James, yes, you recall correctly that there is no recurring annual appropriation or budget reserve practice for IT projects specifically in state government. We see the state government have other reserve practices. We have our state rainy day account, for example, and we have statutory language to the effect of how much money and what practices we follow for putting money into the state rainy day fund each fiscal year. But no such practice exists for putting, an annual amount into a special pot of money for state IT upgrades.
And has JFO, I don't want to say made policy recommendations, but has JFO made policy recommendations on different ways that could be done in the past? Or I suppose it would be in the past.
We presented to the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee last session about some practices that other states have followed and adopted to more routinely fund this work. I think the short answer is that it's often expensive and irregular and difficult to prioritize. And I wouldn't say there's any state or territory that's fully figured out how to fully fund these large, often expensive projects with regularity. Budgets are a game of priorities every year, and it can often be difficult to prioritize some of these, putting aside funds for these large expenses. But happy to talk to the committee more about some of the practices that other states have followed. There are some interesting approaches that have been developed. Some states have annual competitions between executive branch agencies and departments to actually pitch funding projects. Certainly not recommending any specific approach here in Vermont, but just to say that there are states out there that have piloted different ways to efficiently allocate and prioritize funding for these kinds of upgrades.
We interrupted your presentation. Oh, sorry, Rep. James. Do you see that?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to point folks toward the testimony that we took on this. It was really great. And in the document that I turned in, I linked several places where we heard not only from the JFO, but from other states about how they fund this work. And so that testimony has been prepared and it's available on our website.
Representative. And this feels like a good time to address a short question that came up during the last Jitoc meeting. If you're looking at the statutory history behind the Technology Modernization Special Fund, the most recent change was made just last year in the FY26 budget bill, and there was this small technical language change made that replaced the word appropriated with transferred. Any amounts transferred to the special fund by the General Assembly from the general fund. And there was a question last month about, why that change was made, what the reasoning was. And the simple answer is it was just a technical fix to the statute to use the correct term of art. When we're talking about the relationship between the general fund and special funds, the words that we use are that we transfer money from the general fund to special funds. And then from there, funds are appropriated from those special funds to specific projects. And so it was just to clarify and use the right terms of art. So just wanted to address the question that came up last month. So the Technology Modernization Special Fund is certainly one of the largest and certainly the highest profile dedicated funding source the state has for some of these legacy system replacements. But there are other avenues for funding these projects that the state often utilizes. So these might take the form of direct appropriations to ADS or direct appropriations to agencies and departments. There are a select few other special funds within state government that are used specifically for IT projects. The Tax Computer Modernization Special Fund is an example of one that is specifically designed and authorized for technology modernization within the tax department. The Core Technology Fund is another example of a IT dedicated special fund solely for IT use within the judicial branch. And then because the size and the scope of an IT project can really vary greatly, the threshold for legislative engagement varies as well. We know that Jitoc has a statutory role to play in approving the release of funds for some of these very large, complex, high-risk projects. But there are certainly a number of small appropriations that might be made that have relatively smaller legislative engagement. And so I really wanted to leave the rest of my time for questions and discussion with the committee about the fund and be able to follow up with any additional questions. But I think one important take home about the Tech Mod Fund is that it's really for these, historically, it's for these discrete, large scale modernization projects. It's been the beneficiary of, a number of large appropriations or transfers rather from the general fund over the years. But those are discrete and irregular. There's no recurring practice for funding the Technology Modernization Special Fund. And as of today, it's one of the largest dedicated sources of funding for these projects in the state of Vermont.
Great, thanks. We are actually past time, but if does anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move quickly along to Lisa. I hope you have enough time.
Yes, I think so.
And take it away when you're ready.
I am sharing my screen. It wants Megan, it wants a sharing ID or meeting ID.
You're not in this meeting yet.
Oh,
You have the link.
I had you earlier.
Yeah, it's not. I thought you said you signed in, but it's not.
Here. Okay. Okay. So for this meeting, I was to talk about the system evaluation. And one of the things we decided to do was compile a list of all the information available to Jitoc to inform oversight. And that includes broadband and AI and other areas. So that's what I've done. I don't want to go through the list read through the list, but just talk about the different areas available, what you can take from them, and how it could inform your oversight in a systematic way. So CIO's independent review is developed for all projects over 1 million, and it does include some recommendations in it. So when you're looking at oversight, it might be a good time to look and see if the recommendations that were included in the independent review were acted upon during the implementation. The JFO IT review is the one that I do. And I know there have been questions about how to structure oversight. There is structure to all of these items. There's structure to the CIO's independent review. It's based on a common set of evaluation criteria, as is the review that I do. It answers, it asks questions within those 8 areas. and assesses findings, develops recommendations. Also, at the end of all of my reviews, there's a section just entitled Informing Future Reviews. So those are the things specifically that I'm going to go back to and look at for a project. But generally, the A, B, C, and D are milestones being met. Is the project staffed adequately? Are there any functional or process issues that they've had to work around? Any change orders? All of those are questions when you're conducting oversight on a project that are general and can be specific to a broad range of projects, not specific to one project. So that might give you some indication of those questions that you were looking for, those standards that you were looking for. And I also include very unique findings and follow-up areas for each project based on what I'm seeing in a particular project. Now, when I go back and look at a project, I'm reviewing all of those broad areas. I look at all of the broad areas again, as well as the very specific areas. The other areas that you have, the information that you have, are the annual report and budget from ADS. The items here in yellow were the ones added in Act 48. So these are new areas. We included links to the information within this document, thinking it could be a useful toolkit as you move forward to go back to. But again, you'll see that, you know, there is structure here. It's consistent across projects. And then you also have the current inventory of projects. So this is the new area added for Act 48, which includes the original start date at project initiation, original costs. So you have things to draw upon when you're looking and performing the oversight. Now, some of the themes that I've heard and we've talked about before, specifically here in Jitoc, are identifying trends. So through oversight, you're really assessing the current project. You might be identifying weaknesses, whether they be in governance, in process, or in execution of a project. And then perhaps you focus on remedies. And as you're going through projects, like it's the, you know, looking at the trees versus looking at the forest, you might find issues that are occurring within projects, but hopefully over time, you'll start to recognize some trends where you're seeing some commonalities of similar things that show up, where you're really trying to get down to the root cause. You know, what is causing this? Is it an issue with governance? Is it an issue with process or execution that is causing these? And some of the remedies a remedy could just be focusing on that and asking more questions up front when you're considering funding a project, whether or not these issues have been addressed. You know, we saw this come up in BT buys. How is it being addressed in future projects? So I guess what I'm hearing from this committee is the real need to focus on trends and more of a feedback loop. And how can you take it? It's one thing taking testimony on a project that might have had some problems, but what do you do with that information and how can you use it to improve chances of success in the future? And also use it to identify whether or not a project should be funded. Is it mitigating the risk that we've seen across other projects? Should that be a consideration? So I hope this addressed briefly what you were after. Really tried to tie in what's available to you now, how you can use it, and how it could inform and get you to the next stage where you're feeling more in control of using the outcomes of projects to make funding decisions and improve oversight and transparency.
Great. Thank you. Does the committee have any questions?
Just, I wonder on our committee page, this feels like a great tool to come back to, if it would be possible for this to kind of be pulled out.
We will pull it out and put it
Yeah.
into a specific section that's readily available where the links work, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. I think that's gonna
Perfect.
help me the questions going forward with our meeting. So we are 5 minutes before 11, but I suspect everyone is in the room that is going to be here for 11 o'clock. And I know I don't know everybody in the room, so we hadn't done it before, but we'll go around and introduce everyone from the committee. And we'll start with Rep. James, and we'll go through the room and have everyone. Is there someone on Zoom?
Yep, I'm feeling anyone.
Okay, great.
Great. So did you, yep,
Yeah, go
I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District and Chair of House Energy and Digital Infrastructure.
Senator Brock.
I'm Senator Randy Brock. I represent Franklin County and Northern Grand Isle County.
Good morning, Senator David Weeks, representing Rutland County.
Representative Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Representative Monique Priestley, Orange 2.
And I'm Senator Rob Plunkett, Bennington Senate District. And I think we'll start over here with Mr. Sagal and then just go right around the room.
Rick Sagal, Office of Legislative Counsel. Good to see you all. James Duffy, Joint Fiscal Office.
Lisa Dobbin, IT Consultant, Joint Fiscal Office.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Chris Winters, Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Labor. I'm on day 2.
Ethan Weinstein, Digger.
Maria Royal, Office of Legislative Counsel. Kendall Smith, Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Labor. Rowan Hawthorne, Principal Assistant Legislative Liaison at the Department of Labor. Morning, everybody. My name is Christine Murphy. I am the Interim UI Director and Co-Business Lead for the UI Modernization Project.
Morning, my name is Robert Depper. I'm the General Counsel for the Department of Labor.
Do we have anyone on Zoom, Megan?
Yes, Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, good. I'm glad you can hear me. I'm sorry I'm not able to start my video for some reason. In any event, oh, there we go.
There you go.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Kazmarski. I am currently the director of the Disability Law Project at Vermont Legal Aid, formerly a staff attorney in the Poverty Law Project at Legal Aid, where I did a significant amount of unemployment work.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for being here and introducing yourselves. And our agenda, we have the unemployment insurance modernization project update, and we have a number of folks listed. I don't know if it's only going to be those 4, but well, I'll go in order with however well, maybe we won't go in order. Whoever wants to go first, please.
It's okay with you and the committee chair. We thought that Denise, myself, and Christine could all sit up front and give a joint update. And then depending on questions or if there's conversations about legal aid, we have other resources in the room as well.
Wonderful. That's even better. So come on.
All right. Great. Is it okay if we utilize one of these chairs as well, and I'll bring you that one?
You can use whatever you want in whatever fashion you need.
I'll scoot over.
Oh, you guys are too kind. This is your project, so.
Well, you come right, you. Okay, I'll get in the middle, Christine. You can come over. Sorry for this very rigorous musical chairs. We're getting situated. I don't know if you guys are a paper committee or not. Rowan also emailed this summary to the committee assistant for your records, and here's the other 2, but if you are paper-based or not, we brought copies. Maybe because it's Jitoc, I should have assumed you're not paper-based, but but we have all mediums. Yeah. So again, my name is Kendall Smith. I'm the Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Labor. I was formally appointed to this role as of last week, actually. So we have our Deputy Commissioner, Chris Winters, who's on day 2. I am formally on, I suppose, week 2 at this point. So there are aspects of this project that I do just want to be candid that I am getting up to speed on, given that I came to the department when it was essentially almost halfway done, I would say. I do have some previous knowledge from my previous life in the governor's office, but it is a very big IT project with a lot of different twists and turns. And also, so it's nice to meet you in person. So depending on your questions as well, Secretary Riley Hughes, UI Director Murphy will help depending on how in-depth you want to go. So I think it's been probably about a year since Jitoc touched on this project. So just to re-ground us in the why, our current mainframe is over 55 years old. It's from 1970, and I'm sure you have all heard from constituents over the course of your service that have potentially struggled with the system, whether they are claimants or whether they are employers. Because of the age of it, I would say it is very fragile. We do have service interruptions from time to time. There were things we did with the system during the pandemic so we could get benefits out more quickly that because of the age of it could not necessarily be put back after. So with the legislature, with the pandemic really being a catalyst for, okay, it's time for us to really lean in, quite a significant sum of money, which we'll outline later just as a refresher, was allocated mostly to ADS as our IT core partner and some to VDOL to do modernization, building a new system essentially from soup to nuts, with VDOL bringing the project expertise in terms of how does UI work, resources that we learn nationally. Our vendor is FAST. They have done this in other states. That name also might sound familiar to you because they did the DMV core system and recently a system for the tax department. Probably didn't hear much about the tax department system. It's a good thing. We're hoping that eventually that'll be our story too. We'll dive into the timeline here in just a second. Like I said, we're about halfway through here roughly now. This project, the specific project started last September. And it is set to go live in spring, summer of next year. Our priority is that when it goes live, it works and it goes live smoothly. So we will talk more about what we're doing to achieve that here in a few seconds through testing, through training, and through communication. But some of the things this new system is going to do, the goal is to do our every day. Christine's steeped in this every day, as is support from ADS, is to make sure we're able to service both the claimants, both the employers more timely, more efficiently, more smoothly. So I'll pause there for just a second because I see maybe some thoughts before we get into details.
I should have asked beforehand if you're okay with the interruptions or if you want to go through.
Oh, you can interrupt us.
Everyone usually says that, so perhaps if you'll go ahead.
Just clarifying, spring, summer 26?
Yes, sorry. Yep, so we are less than a year out. So hopefully by this time next year, we have a contract in place. So by this time next year, it'll be rolled out. Like with any big IT project, there might be things, again, we're going to talk about all the testing we're doing in a second, right? Bumps along the way. But by September, October next year, we'll be through the launch by hopefully at least 2 or 3 months and through the worst of it and on our way with a new system. I'm really excited about this from a department perspective. I know we're just talking about the IT component right now, but if we can get our UI system to where it should be, it'll free up a lot of capacity for us across our department and our other divisions to focus on workforce, to focus on LMI, to focus on VOSHA, workers' comp. They're doing pretty well. Their regulatory programs are just doing their thing. But if we get our IT system for UI in place and working as it should, again, it's going to be big morale booster, not just for the public that's using it every day, but for our staff as well that is struggling with the system every day when it often breaks or certain components of it go down. So again, enhanced user experience is going to be the primary objective, as well as improving accessibility. We'll talk more about that, efficiency, accuracy, streamlined processes, as well as training and support available for everybody that's using it. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the timeline in more detail and where we are in it with testing?
Yeah, so as Kendall has touched upon a little bit, there's a little graph or a visual on your sheets too. It shows that we kicked off our modernization project in September of 2024. We immediately dove right into building out requirements for the new system, which was actually a pretty exciting thing to be involved in. Both subject matter experts and experts from the FAST Enterprise team joined forces. We finished the tax development entirely. We are still working out some of the benefits development, but we've dove right into the testing as of last month. Wait, we're in October? Nope, September. Yeah, we started in September of 2025, and so far things are looking really good. We've got the opportunity right now. On the next page, you'll see the different types of testing we're doing. We've dove into the business and the converted data testing. And so that'll actually bring us to the spring, end of winter of 2026. So I wrote a little description in here about what each one of those things means. So with the business testing, that's really putting test scripts in the system, banging on the system, trying to make sure that we can actually test out functionality for different things, employer tax rating, filing a quarterly wage and contribution report, filing an initial claim. So those things are going really good. And the converted data piece is really exciting because you actually get to test with the data coming from the mainframe system. And then once those things are completed, we're going to move into performance testing, end-to-end testing, and then last but not least, security testing, which is Denise's favorite. Yeah. To move in.
Sure. Do you want to? Yeah. So in addition to those types of testing, there are additional stakeholders. If you want to talk a little bit about some of the other groups that right now in our plan, we'd like to invite in, it'll probably be in the kind of the January through April-ish timeframe. With fresh eyes too, because again, we are living and breathing this all day long. And with anything, sometimes that can make you blind to certain things. So some of the other groups that Director Murphy has been thinking about bringing in are, if you want to go through your thought process on that.
Yeah, so as you'll see listed here, we wrote down just a few. This is not a complete list. We still have our feelers out to different stakeholders for sure. We've had conversations with the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns for years. We have a great partnership with them. They have the entire municipality umbrella. And so hundreds of employers that are, willing to jump in and actually try to file a quarterly wage and contribution report, go into our self-service e-services system where they can pull down a tax rate notice. They can look at their contribution rate. They can see if they have a refund available. So they are pretty excited to join forces with us. And then we've got, different groups of employers and claimants and third-party administrators that we plan on bringing in. I think most importantly is going to be the claimant population. That appears to be the population that we have underserved for several years now, just because of our antiquated systems. So we're really excited about giving those folks the experience of being the person that gets to come to the table and say that they got to try to file a UI claim in this brand new system first. For employer populations, we have a lot of mass layoffs, seasonal layoffs, that those folks come in and they might have 50 employees. They may have 150 employees. We're going to use this opportunity to have those employers jump in the system. They can test things out. The claimants can test things out. They can upload mass separation forms. They can fill out separation forms. They can conduct some fact finding in there. So we've got a lot to look forward to. We have not been able to reach out yet to the Vermont Legal Aid, but we are hoping that they will also partner with us and be able to go through a user experience, probably more so for the claimants, to tell us where we could do things better, enhancements that they think we might be able to make. And so then we can go back to our vendor and we can look to make some of those changes. It depends on what type of changes those are. They may have to be post go live, but we're definitely willing to take the feedback and looking forward to that. And then we also partner with the National Association for State Workforce Agencies. They are a wonderful partner. They provide all states UI systems workforce development with a ton of guidance to help us run our programs in compliance with the federal government. Those folks have also recently offered to have some people fly into Vermont and actually get into our system and do some testing for us. So they're very familiar with UI, which is a huge advantage, but they've also seen a lot of other UI systems, including some systems that FAST has implemented.
So testing is mantra 1 from now until spring, summer. Mantra 2 is communication in our team every day. I don't know, maybe fortunately for you, unfortunately for us, this really crunch time is going to be perfectly aligned with your legislative session, January through May. So that does create a communication opportunity for us to be coming and checking in with Jitoc, depending on how often you want to do that. But we've also been engaging with actual communication professionals across state government, not just in our agency, but reaching out to the Agency of Commerce as well as the Agency of Administration to really lay out what is our communication strategy for different populations that are going to be interested. So again, for employers, what's coming down the pike. We're actually getting ready to put out a postcard to employers right now with a QR code with more information. We do have a landing page on our website where you can go on and track the project and see what's going on. It has kind of like the Domino's oven baking, like prep, like it's in the oven, it's cooling, it's out for delivery, timeline indicator on there. So there's always that resource for you as well, or anybody that wants to look at it. The ADS webpage also does have some of the financials and project status in their more comprehensive database of all the projects across state government where you can see this. So employers, claimants, the legislature as a really important partner in this, as well as really press, anybody who wants to know. We're trying to frame out what's the best way to get the word out. That way people understand what's coming, how to interface with it. So communicate, mantra number 2. But then there are some additional kind of stakeholder collaborations that we also have in process in the queue leading up to go live, if you want to mention a few of those as well.
Sure. So we've got an accessibility review currently underway. Fast Enterprises, our vendor, is conducting that. We've got a usability study that the DASWA, the National Association for State Workforce Agencies, has offered to come in and do for us. We have recently presented to the National Tax Practitioners Association. They received the presentation really well. We just kind of told them some of what we're telling you, how things are going to work, what their experience is going to be like. They were excited to have us, so much so that they invited us back for the next one, which we're looking forward to. And then we had another National Association for TPAs reach out to us, and they gave us, I think it was like a 50-page guide of best practices, things that they think each state should consider when they're modernizing their systems. And we've been able to go through that front to back, and we've come out with a couple of things that we are going to go back to our vendor with and say, you know what, this many associations, this many TPAs within this association think things should work this way. So, we need to look to make that change. And that national association actually represents the vast majority of the TPAs that file quarterly wage and contribution reports for Vermont employers.
Can you just give an example of what a TPA is in case folks are not intimately familiar with that term?
Sure. So one of the biggest tax practitioner associations is ADP. And those folks, they actually file quarterly wage contribution reports for about 4,500 of the 31,000 employers that we have. So that one TPA is responsible for going into our system on a quarterly basis, uploading those quarterly reports, and then paying the associated underlying contribution that's due.
One of the other things that we are doing that I feel like is worth mentioning right now is around when Chris mentioned the word accessibility, we are doing translation we have now 20 videos that we're getting ready to post that are in 18 languages other than English plus sign language. So 20 videos total about how to use the UI system, how to file a claim. We're pretty excited about that effort. We have done a plain English review of a lot of our materials, which is pretty much what it sounds like. Is this overly complicated? Is there a way we can say this that is simpler, that more people will understand? We had a UI equity grant for that work and for that purpose to do accessibility around translation, plain English review. And it is also being supplemented by funds from the Office of Racial Equity in an appropriation that the legislature had given them a few years ago now around translating vital documents. So we do have the vital documents kind of parameter to around some of this, but I'm pretty excited about that piece in terms of looking at some of our materials and making sure, again, they are simple, that anybody picks them up, can understand what they're supposed to do when they're filing a UI claim. Obviously an important piece of the work. So I want to mention that as well. On your last page, this is pretty straightforward. I'm not sure if it's really worth repeating, but it was just kind of a review of the investment that has gone into this project. 3.5 million was appropriated to labor in fiscal year 22 with ARPA. Those funds are fully expended. The bulk of the money was 30 million to ADS in an IT modernization fund in FY 23. And then we have at labor 3 million per year in our base general fund appropriation for staffing, duty backfilling, and the other efforts that will make this successful. Then the total life cycle costs are currently pegged at 46 million. So we should all be very invested in this going well, and any support you can give us, we would appreciate. So overall, I think the takeaway, if there's one thing you are taking away from this, is right now we are on time. I don't want to undersell the amount of work that still needs to be done and the sprint that will be. But we are on time and we are within the funds that have been allocated to us. I don't want to promise, obviously, into the future as technology evolves and working with a vendor that 3 years from now costs go up. But right now, this project is more or less on time, on budget. I don't know, Secretary Riley Hughes, we've been speaking a lot. If there's anything you would add to what we just shared.
Sorry to interrupt before you go. Rep. Priestley has a question.
Sorry.
Sorry, Rep. Sebelius has a question.
So, Department of Labor, a lot of federal funding.
Yes. Yes.
All federal funding.
It's primary, not all, but yes, definitely.
Any of the federal funding that you receive allowed to be used for IT infrastructure? In other words, is that something that we could ask you to be planning for improvements in the future?
Admin fund, but not for this. Do you want to, sorry.
Yeah, so we get allocated based upon a calculation from the USDOL every year, funds to administer the program. If there were additional opportunities, if the federal government had grant money available, we would be able to request such, but it has to be for the sole purpose of what they decide the grant money has to be for. So in the past, they've done UI modernization grants, but they are not out there currently.
And with this, maybe getting a little too far ahead here, but with the improvement of the system, there's projected to be significant savings at DOL, right? From this.
I wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to promise that yet.
In terms of personnel or?
In terms of personnel, yeah.
Okay.
Savings come in the form of time,
Mhm.
both for claimants, employers and staff.
Okay.
But I don't feel confident to give you a number to say we're going to save X million from this in personnel or other cost.
Do you anticipate needing the same amount of personnel with a modernized system that you do now?
So
You've got like some pretty crazy contracts for.
We do. And why I'm being kind of vague and nudgy about this right now is that no two UI claims, unfortunately, are the same, and it's very demand driven. So right now, like all of us, right, we're watching what's our economy doing, and is demand going to go up? Right now, we're hearing a lot from employers making decisions around tariffs, around a number of different factors in terms of layoffs. So it's hard to project because it is very dependent on demand. And we tend to go through quite significant swings, even on an annual basis. So we're coming into our busy season now with winter. And all the seasonal layoffs that happen around the same time. So that is often a pain point for us because our call center gets busier, frankly, than say June, July. And so even on an annual basis, and Chris can maybe be more articulate about like what those actual numbers necessarily look like or jumps in a percentage basis are, but even within a normal year, there's busy times and slower times. And then again, it's very demand driven based on economic factors and human factors. So, but that is a fair question. I understand what you're asking, and we can work more into that and potentially follow up with you.
Bouncing off what you just said, the system right now, well, obviously during COVID, there was the major spike. Talking about ups and downs right now.
Yep.
Right now, can it handle, say, another COVID spike? And is the new project something that's built in that it's going to be able to sort of?
I will give an answer, but I would, if Christine wants to correct me, or again, another COVID spike would be like the last COVID spike. So the short answer is no. We would be needing to look at some additional contracts and support if we went in the kind of fully employed to in a 2-week time period mass furloughs or layoffs. We would definitely need to be resurrecting what we had to do during the pandemic with Maximus and other vendors to try to meet the demand. With the new system, though, it should not be that the goal is that it would be able to hand, I don't want to say perfectly another pandemic event, but much better than the last one. And Chris, I don't know if you want to be a little bit more specific.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the self-service capabilities that the new system has. Currently, claimants can't file their own initial claim online. They have to call 1-877-214-3330 and talk to the representative until.
And that's about a 30-minute manual process once you get someone on the phone. And so this with self-service, for those that want to use it, are like and open to doing things online, that will significantly cut down the call volume that right now is, I know, again, a major frustration of many.
And Rep. James, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one, a little bit tangential, but kind of related to VDOL's ability to serve Vermonters. Commissioner, do you have any idea what your vacancy rate is right now? How many positions are unfilled?
I do, and I want to say it's about 20 across the entire department. I could pull that number and get back to you. I look at it every Friday, and I did not bring it with me today.
Thanks.
Rowan might be able to pull that up while we're sitting here and give us an answer from last Friday. So if you give us 2 seconds, I'll be able to answer that.
While we're waiting those 2 seconds, Lisa, you had something to add?
Just to add, there was a question about savings, but I think it would be really important not to lose sight of the risk aversion of having a new system and how vulnerable the state is with the old system, and that's restless.
I agree.
Because of the old legacy system and how it's set up and the lack of documentation of the old system and the vulnerabilities that it has, it's really dangerous to keep it up. It's worse because of COVID. You know, the same things. We can't serve our population. So the fact that we will have a modern system that you feel confident in your, recovery, or addressing those types of traffic issues, that it's night and day in terms of risk addiction. It does eliminate quite a bit of risk. And maybe Denise can add to that.
I feel like I don't even need to be here because you covered everything. And I think we've been so closely tied to this that we're tracking the intent of the project, which is full replacement and replacement now, because we can't take on another pandemic. I do get a little nervous as we go into peak areas around the performance of the existing environment. And so we have got an all hands on deck model ready to go like we did last, I think it's a year ago, December, 2 years ago, December. So the concept of cost savings doesn't necessarily align to what we're spending on today. So if we want to compartmentalize the tech costs, that's a much bigger conversation. If we want to look at the operating costs of the business or the operating costs of the support of the tech. So I think that's a future conversation.
I will follow up and say, if there's one good thing from this morning, my memory is amazing because we do have 20 vacancies right now.
20%.
Not 20%, 20, the number, 20, the number, but that's across the department, Rep. James. And we have four divisions and a number of programs.
Thanks.
I have just one last question. What is the expected life cycle of the system? And the follow-up is there a plan in place to replace it?
Replace it. Very forward-looking. I'm actually gonna look to
the lifespan today. We look at everything in 5-year life cycle. That's when we look at it from a project standpoint. But I believe that we have a 10-year horizon outlook on this. We also are trying to look at what a platform-wide effort would look like across all of the departments if the state were to continue investing in this platform and met the needs. So what we would be looking at is more of a risk mitigation, business continuity standpoint, which wouldn't necessarily be a new system, but kind of your COOP plans on what if something went down, what would that look like? And that is a kind of a more realistic conversation if we were to all of a sudden no longer have access to tech connectivity.
This current system has lasted for 55 years. So
I don't know what we're paying.
Perhaps the reason why the replacement plan needs to be in place. So great. Was there more from three of you?
no,
I have
that's
one last comment.
yes.
So when we joined this modernization effort, we, as a whole department, we are committed. We made a commitment that we're never going to stop modernizing this time. We're not going to let something get 55 years old and have no capabilities or ways to enhance it or to operate every federal program that the feds hand down to us during a state of an emergency or a pandemic or a disaster. So if we do it right, we don't stop.
Any other questions right now?
So many questions. Sorry, guys. All right. And part of this is like I was using the UI system the end of last year and the beginning of this year as a claimant, and I think I ran into every bug that somebody could run into, which was great. So I'm just curious. It kind of flagged for me when you were saying, Kendall, that the training videos are about to be done, ready to be posted. So I'm just curious, but yet this testing on the system has just started. So I'm just curious, what is and this goes to Lisa's kind of questions. You guys, I don't know if you were watching or in the room, but we had been asking for how can we best, serve in an oversight role? What are the types of questions we should be asking for every single project? And so one of the kind of areas there is, as we try to see trends or patterns across different software and IT projects that are going well and are not going well, the whole spectrum, trying to understand what makes a good project, what doesn't, or areas that we need to look into and interrupt. So part of that is the questions that Lisa had provided are, when it gets to, you addressed dates we're supposed to ask about and staffing that we're supposed to ask about. But the next thing is when there's identifying the functions and the business roles requirements of a software project. And then as you get in throughout the process, once you get into stages where you're doing testing and you realize oh shit, that actually doesn't work. We need to do another feature. Chris had said that as you're doing testing, there might be things that come up that you have to wait until after go live to address. So I'm curious, what is the process of testing? What is the moment where a feature, what is the measurement for having a feature where you're oh, we can't actually go live with this. We need to address it. Then I guess, how do you change your training videos at that point? But that's a bigger question. I guess a different question. But what is that process for identifying features, saying, oh, we need to do a change order? How does that change order come to us or go to appropriations? That whole process.
Yeah. So Chris is literally living this every day right now. We have a testing lab up at the Dewey building, kind of by National Life, where all of this magic happens, so to speak. And when we do these tests, there are pass-fail rates for what they look like. And Chris is constantly reporting out to our senior leadership team the ones that are, and just because something I do want to say fails the first time, then we fix it. So that's the point of the testing, is that even if it does fail at that initial test, it's okay, it failed. What's the adjustment that needs to be made? And that is a fluid, normal, ongoing process right now leading up to go live. In terms of what is that kind of trigger point or threshold of this is truly not going to work by spring, summer? Those are going to be daily conversations, but I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more, again, succinctly and specifically, since again, you're living it. And I think you just came from Dewey or going back there this afternoon about what that looks like in action.
Yeah, so currently, because we're in the business and the converted testing stage, what we're doing is executing the scripts that I mentioned earlier. And those scripts are built based upon requirements that were already established. So if those scripts are failing, that means they're not meeting the original described business requirement. Those are 100%. Those have to be done. What you'll also find is some things that are not working necessarily maybe as the business had envisioned, but it technically does meet the requirement. Then those things go on to what they call a pull list or a parking lot. They wait until the end of the day. They pull me in for an hour long and my co-business lead. And then we talk about those. Are they showstoppers? Are they deal breakers? Are we going to be able to still deliver the service that we originally said? Was it in the RFP and it just got missed? So we go through that evaluation process and we're like, yes, 90% of our stuff is getting fixed as it's being found, and they're just minor things.
And so part of that is going back to fast and being like, we still have, again, we're spring, summers, there's still time. You need to fix this before go live and make sure it works. I do want to address those videos. They're a little bit more overarching than click this button. And then, walking you through how to file a UI claim in a new system, for example. They're a little bit, they're still helpful. And I'm happy to actually share those links with you if you want to look at them. After this, we can follow up with that and see what they are and take any feedback.
The additional videos that are being built, videos, user guides, they are going to be step-by-step and for the various processes, right? How to file a claim, how to file a quarterly wage contribution report, how to file a weekly claim, how to reopen your claim, how to set up direct deposit. All of those will be created before we go live. And if you've ever been out on the tax department's website, they did a beautiful job with tons of user guides that are public facing, which also help the, the employers and the TPAs and the tax filers.
Yeah, more a comment, I think, for the committee, which is, we, as we see these major IT programs come online that are replacing very labor intensive systems, I think it's important for us to really think about how that can lead to planning for IT infrastructure consistently, investments consistently. So we've seen this with DMV. I don't know. I'm now a little bit like, oh, we should really, because that was also very labor intensive what we were replacing. So it seems like an important question to ask, an important planning to encourage the agencies and departments, and maybe communication to the appropriations committee. Certainly further conversation for all of us, but.
If I could just make a comment to that, I think what you're seeing, one, through the establishment of the IT mod fund, the work that's been going on to two systems that had an immense amount of manual, let's call it business process associated with it. And the whole effort underway with collaboration and expectations of the departments that were running it to say, what the requirements are from how to get our job done and how to deliver service to Vermonters. It's using this as an opportunity to break down those manual processes and start automating them a little bit more. So the tech became that fuel to get to that destination for them, and we have opportunity throughout. But I would say when I sat in this committee a year ago or 2 years ago talking about what we did for phase 1 of DMV,
For different meetings 1 year and 2 years ago.
that's true. So that's the first phase launch. And this is that's the expectation we need to start driving to, and the collaboration is really critical. I haven't said one word. This has all been the Department of Labor team because they truly embrace their business process, but we're here to support them, and the technology is just the energy and the fuel that they're using to get there. So this is what we would like to see with all of the projects aligned to Representative Priestley, what you're talking about with testing and what are those expectations and what do you do when, and all of those things get evaluated. So now we've allowed it to be a level of predictability, but ultimately becomes a very consistent and expected user experience for planners too.
And stay there. I wanted to bring Ms. Kazmarsky into the conversation. I probably should have brought you in much earlier, but can we hear now from your perspective And then we'll continue the conversation with you as well.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Kelly Kazmarski. I am the director of the Disability Law Project. I started this position about 1.5 years ago. And before that, I was a staff attorney for about 8 years in the Poverty Law Project. Importantly, during the pandemic, when I was the only person at Legal Aid doing unemployment compensation work. Obviously, that changed pretty quickly after March of 2020. We estimate, interestingly, that at least 1/3 of our clients in UI cases are disabled, and often the disability plays a key role in the case in some way. And although I no longer have the caseload I used to, I'm still aware of a lot of the issues going on in the unemployment compensation world, and have stayed current with updates from my colleagues Susan Garcia-Nofi and Barb Prine, who some of you may know. Unfortunately for us, Susan no longer works at Vermont Legal Aid. And Barb was unable to testify today, so I'm here to present these comments on behalf of Legal Aid. As you know, Legal Aid has been involved in representing claimants, UI claimants, for decades. We believe we are the largest claimants representatives organization in the state. Although we understand the enormity and the complexity of this modernization process, I would be remiss as a claimant's representative if I did not comment on the frustration that we feel over the length of time that it has taken for this modernization process. Admittedly, the pandemic derailed this process, but modernization was certainly something that started long before the pandemic. And it's, from the claimant's perspective, a little frustrating to see the department still wrestling with this today. Having said that, I am thrilled to hear the updates from the folks who were here from the department. That's heartening to hear. And I have to acknowledge the changes. I don't think a single name was familiar to me except Attorney Depper, perhaps. And so I'm glad to meet you all. And again, really happy to hear those significant updates. Because we really did not know what was happening at Legal Aid with this modernization project. In the past, the department has consulted us for claimants' perspectives on projects. For example, we were involved in the equity report that was done by Bloomworks back in 2024. We hope that the recommendations that came with the final report of that Bloomworks project were effectively involved in the development of the new system and considered. But again, we don't really know what data or input was used in the development of the new system. Since we have not been involved in that. We're concerned about not being involved in the development process, which I understand is past now. But our concern is about, it stems from our interest in wanting the system to succeed. We are the organization in the best position to know the pain points for claimants in this process, in the UI claims process. And a project this large certainly has to consider all stakeholders' perspectives. It would certainly cost more money to fix things later than to fix them at going into the project. Legal Aid sent a letter to the Department of Labor in December of 2024, urging the department to propose or support legislation creating a UI Modernization Advisory Council. The idea was that this council, with representatives from the legislature, from the department, from the claimant's point of view, from the employer's point of view, would all facilitate constituent input into this massive change. We included in our letter a sample legislation from Pennsylvania for VDOL's consideration. We didn't receive any substantive response to that suggestion. And so in January of 25, H356 was introduced by Representative Priestley, which proposed to codify the idea of an advisory panel with the creation of the UC Benefit Modernization Advisory Committee. While it appears that bill didn't get much traction in the last legislative session, we hope that it will have renewed interest next year. We still believe this advisory committee is the best way to ensure quality input into the modernization process from all stakeholders on a regular and meaningful basis for the remaining phases of the project. While we don't represent employers, we expect they also would want to participate in this process. In the implementation of this new system, claimants and employers are not adversaries. We all want this system to succeed. The VDOL website, and as we heard today, the system is expected to go live spring or summer of 2026. When the program does launch, it will be critical to have in-person help for claimants. The VDOL website says that the job centers, the staff there explicitly are not available to help with UI claims. And so we hope the department will be considering adding staff to have more in-person resources available for claimants around the state. And this is another reason why we really want to continue to be involved. And I was glad to hear that we were going to be invited for testing consultations. We will be fielding a lot of those questions from claimants when the system goes live. And so it will be really important for us and for the department. I think we can be an ally for the department if we're more effectively able to answer questions and assist claimants with up-to-date info about the status of the system. I did want to mention about the testing, the comments that we heard. I'm very glad to hear that the department is focused on having claimants involved. In fact, the comment was made that most important, the claimant population, to give them the experience of coming to the table and being involved. Which is great to hear. I'm a little concerned that it's a little late in the game since the system is effectively already, it sounds like, developed. I don't want to dissuade the department from involving claimants in whatever testing and processing and development remains. But clearly, my hope is that the system that is now in place will address a lot of the concerns that we have had consistently from the claimant perspective. I've heard a lot of comments about making sure that businesses and other parts of government are effectively able to use the system, but as was mentioned, the claimants probably will use it more than anyone. So it's critical that their concerns and needs are taken into account. Let's see, I guess that pretty much sums up my comments. I did want to flag that there will be updates necessary to the Employment Security Board rules, which we had discussed with the department years ago when in one conversation about modernization. But in our experience, it takes a very long time to effectuate ESB rule changes. So we urge the department to begin this process as soon as possible so that there's not a disconnect between the rules and the new UI system when it launches. We at Legal Aid know that modernization is a huge opportunity and a massive undertaking for VDOL. We really appreciate all the work that you all clearly are putting into trying to think about every aspect of this. And we want to support VDOL's efforts in any way we can in order to build a new system that is accessible and usable by all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kazmarski. So Rep. Priestley, now back to you.
Cool. Thank you so much, everybody. This is really helpful. So I guess two questions that again, kind of like to this theme, specifically about this project, but also thinking about all projects. So the accessibility review, you said is like underway. And Kelly just said that there had been a report talking about accessibility recommendations. So, but wasn't sure if those were incorporated. So, first question is like, how are those recommendations being incorporated?
So those are two separate efforts of work. So the Fast Enterprises is doing one of them, which is great because they're doing it on their own system and they're finding opportunities.
Okay.
We will separately be applying all of the findings from that report and ensuring we've already got it assigned to somebody, my process manager on the team. So she will be making sure that we address all of those areas.
Awesome. And then the other piece, which goes to the kind of broader thing, is question about stakeholders engaged in the original. You're talking about the business requirements testing and like making sure that that's meeting, which is great. I guess a question for me is wondering if all of the necessary stakeholders were engaged in the business requirements building piece, and as you go through testing, what happens if you run into a testing group like claimants where you're not actually meeting business requirements that you might have had that you missed because you didn't involve those stakeholders in the process?
So the business requirements were made in alignment with state and federal government. Like those are the rules that we have to follow. We have to make sure the program is going to run and be in federal and state compliance. It is not too late. I don't want people to think that we're testing and it's going to be too late by the time the claimants come in. If we find something that does not work the way that it needs to work, we will address it. Absolutely.
We're not sitting here saying the system is going to launch on this day at this hour, and saying spring, summer is so that we are able to do what we need to do to make sure it goes smoothly and make the changes that need to be made so it's successful. Absolutely.
I will say that we don't necessarily want to hand over to the public a system that isn't baked enough, right? We don't need them there finding the errors and reporting back. System doesn't work, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for our team to go fully vet this thing along the side of Fast Enterprises. And then when we feel like we've got something of solid and sustainable, that we're able to have them start doing the user testing.
Briefly, and then afterwards, Ms. Kazmarski will jump back in.
Just a related question to if something came up where business requirements didn't meet all of the needs and there is something that does need to be changed in order to make sure public go live is perfect. Funding. So if you come into a place where you're like, oh no, we actually have to address this thing before we go live. Now where to stop? Historically, some of the projects we've gotten, we're too far invested to say, wait, basically we're forced somewhat to say, sure, let's approve the continuation of more money because it's too late now to turn back. So curious about funding and how that process would come to us or appropriations or the standing committees to make sure that you've got what you need to have a successful launch.
And Secretary Riley, who's going to add on to this. But again, we do have a contract with FAST about what they're supposed to be delivering.
Mm-hmm.
So there is part of this that is that kind of daily, weekly, us pushing our vendor to say, this is what you agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do within the scope of the budget and the contract that we've signed, what you need to do to make it happen. And FAST has been a great partner in that. I don't want to say they're not or give that impression. They've been a tremendous partner and they've been very flexible with us with that give and take. But I will say there's not, to your point, there's not necessarily a cushion of funding that we're sitting on that's not accounted for in some way, shape, or form. So to a certain extent, with ADS, with you all, with others, if something came up that was unforeseen and over the contracted amount, we'd be having to have that conversation with you, like any legislative appropriation conversation, and prioritizing that fix. But so far we haven't run into that. So,
hopefully you won't.
Using this project as an example, you're talking about a very established model and an established program that being able to plug a tech tool that's doing this and just customize it to the Vermont brand and Vermont specificities, that's very different than if we were to create something that's never been created before. That's what we're going to end up potentially running into those scenarios and more likely run into those scenarios. But in something like this, maybe extensibility in a particular area, but that wouldn't be a reason not to go live.
Can I just address one piece about our regional offices really quick? And Kelly, I want to follow up with you on this because right now, so we have 11 regional offices and people do walk in every day for UI help and services. And we have been taking this a little bit outside the scope of IT modernization. But over the past, since December, right before around the time I came on board, Christy and our workforce director have been doing a lot of cross-training efforts, and those regional office staff have been coming up to our Montpelier offices, meeting with UI staff, so they can build their skills to be able to triage some of the more basic UI walk-in questions. And we've set up their own kind of special hotline, so to speak. So if somebody walks into our Springfield office or our Newport office, our Bennington office, our Barry office, and says, I need whatever help with my UI claim, they have kind of a special speed response channel where they can connect to our UI staff and do what they can to help that person. Again, it's not perfect, and Kelly, so I want to follow up with you and see where that is on the website, because it is true in that those offices are funded through federal workforce dollars, and that staff is workforce staff. But we do recognize there has been a huge almost digital literacy component where people who don't want to use the computer, they don't want to use the phone, or they can't for whatever reason. So it might be I want to, but I can't for a myriad of reasons. And that being able to have that in-person support is going to continue to be necessary. Frankly, more of the messages I see from especially an older demographic are, I don't want to use the computer for this, versus why is this stuff not online? And so that's been kind of just illuminating for me and showing my own blindnesses where I'm just like, let's just get it all online. But there is a population that needs that digital support, and our regional offices are able to do some of that basic help. So Kelly, I want to follow up with you on that piece and make sure you have that information.
Commissioner, if I can add, part of the plan is to actually have a UI expert out in every single regional office, if not two, when we go live, to make sure that we can handle the foot traffic coming in.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot just let the workforce development staff try to juggle their day jobs, providing great services, and expect them to handle what will arguably be an increase in traffic. So we plan on having subject matter experts in every location.
And some basic training for them as well in the new system. So again, they can help do some of that triage work.
Ms. Kazmarski?
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. And I will look forward to catching up with you more about that offline. Thank you. That's excellent. And my question, actually, when you were speaking earlier about claimant testing, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to, and maybe it's not developed yet. I was just wondering about the plan for claimant testing, sort of how you plan to do it, how you plan to make sure to reach out to claimants who might be experiencing different barriers. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about that at this point. Thank you.
Yeah. Are we, again, Chris, do you want to take the first stab at that if we do have
we do have an outline. Okay. We have reached out to our equal opportunity officer at the Department of Labor, and we have asked for other community members that we might be able to get in contact with so we can reach some of the populations of folks that Vermont Legal Aid is referring to. It's all baked into our communications plan.
Okay, perfect.
And then the testing portion of it, we've got a test environment. I will probably set up locations, or we can have town halls. We can give people access to go into the testing environment, and we'll step by step say, okay, let's walk through this. We're going to file an initial plan because that's where all the magic starts.
But Kelly, maybe that's something you're potentially able to help us with, and we can follow up with you as well. If you, as we're doing that claimant piece, if you're able to help us identify these would be 10 people willing to participate that you think would be appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to offer that. Certainly, we'd be happy to connect you with folks that could participate.
Okay, wonderful.
Any more questions?
When is a good time to check back in? I see my chair had her hand up. I don't know if I.
I was having a similar thought. What are the next steps?
Maybe January, February, once, I don't know what your meeting schedule will be, but we will be further down the line by then. If you wanted to do kind of a beginning, middle, end of session status update, I think would probably work well. I do just want to caution, every time you do pull us in here and it is appropriate, and I will commit to doing beginning, middle, end at least. You're taking Christine away from testing.
Testing should be done in February, so.
No, and communication. And so just also with committees of jurisdiction, we want to keep you updated, but I am a little bit anxious around balancing capacity to be like all hands on deck with also the regular legislative process, for other priorities that we all might have. Just putting that seed in your minds for now.
Great. Anything more? Anything else? Well, thank you all four of you for coming in. That was the update I think we were looking for. So thank you. And we can go on.